My stepdaughter insulted me in front of my friends. When I confronted her, my mother-in-law slapped me and said, "Don't you dare say anything to her or next time it won't be just the slap." I looked at my husband and he said, "If you want to discipline someone, have your own child." Dad-in-law added, "Some people just don't understand family dynamics." Stepdaughter smirked. "Finally, someone who gets it," uncle agreed. "Stepparents should know their boundaries." Aunt nodded. "Blood relations always come first." I just smiled. The next morning, everything changed. My name is Carla and I'm 32 years old. I married my husband, Preston, 3 years ago, and he came with a 15-year-old daughter named Sienna from his previous marriage. When we first met, Sienna seemed like a sweet kid. She was polite, got good grades, and even seemed excited about having me around. I thought we were building a real relationship. How wrong I was. The trouble started about 8 months after Preston and I got married. Sienna began testing boundaries. Small things at first, leaving messes for me to clean up, forgetting to do chores she'd agreed to, talking back when Preston wasn't around. I tried to address these issues with Preston, but he always had an excuse for her behavior. "She's just adjusting," he'd say. "She's been through a lot with the divorce." I understood that. I really did. I tried to be patient to give her space to earn her respect rather than demand it. But Sienna seemed to interpret my kindness as weakness, and her behavior escalated. The family dynamics didn't help. Preston's parents, Robert and Linda, had never warmed up to me. They made it clear from day one that they thought Preston had remarried too quickly after his divorce from Sienna's mother, Claire. Preston's brother, Mike, and his wife, Janet, always took Sienna's side in any disagreement, treating her like she could do no wrong. But I pushed through it all because I loved Preston, and I genuinely wanted to build a family with him and Sienna. The breaking point came on a Saturday in March. I had invited 3 of my closest friends over for lunch: Amy, Jessica, and Rachel. We planned a nice afternoon catch-up session, something I'd been looking forward to for weeks. I'd spent the morning preparing Preston's famous lasagna recipe and setting up the patio with nice dishes and flowers. Sienna had been sulking all morning because Preston had grounded her the night before for coming home 2 hours past curfew. When my friends arrived, she was still in her pajamas at 1 p.m., lounging on the living room couch with her phone. She was now 18 and a senior in high school, but still living at home. "Sienna, honey," I said gently. "Could you please go get dressed? I have friends coming over for lunch." She didn't even look up from her phone. "This is my house, too. I can wear whatever I want." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as my friends exchanged glances. "Of course, it's your house," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I just thought you might want to join us for lunch once you're dressed." That's when Sienna looked up with the most contemptuous expression I'd ever seen on her face. "Why would I want to have lunch with you and your boring friends? And just so you know, Carla, you're not my mom and you never will be. Stop trying to boss me around in my dad's house." The silence that followed was deafening. Amy actually gasped. Jessica stared at her plate. Rachel looked like she wanted to disappear. I felt humiliated beyond words, but I tried to keep my composure. "Sienna, that was incredibly rude and hurtful," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Please apologize and go to your room." Sienna laughed, actually laughed. "Make me, stepmommy." At that moment, Preston walked in from the garage where he'd been working on his car. Instead of addressing Sienna's behavior, he immediately went to her defense. "What's going on here?" he asked, putting a protective hand on Sienna's shoulder. "Carla is trying to kick me out of my own living room because her friends are here," Sienna said, putting on her best innocent voice. "Carla," Preston said, turning to me with disapproval in his eyes. "Sienna lives here, too. She has every right to be in the living room." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My friends were witnessing this entire humiliating scene and my own husband was taking his daughter's side without even asking what had actually happened. "Preston, she was incredibly disrespectful," I started to explain. She's 16, Carla, teenagers can be moody. Maybe you should have asked her privately instead of embarrassing her in front of your friends. That's when I snapped. Sienna, go to your room now. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I was at my breaking point. Sienna's eyes widened in surprise. I'd never spoken to her like that before. You can't tell me what to do, Sienna shouted. While you're living in this house and acting like a spoiled brat, yes, I can, I shot back. That's when all hell broke loose. Preston's parents had apparently arrived while we were arguing. I heard the front door slam and suddenly Linda was storming into the living room with Robert, Mike, and Janet right behind her. What is going on here? Linda demanded, immediately going to Sienna's side. Carla's being mean to Sienna, Preston said, and I felt my heart sink at how easily he threw me under the bus. She told me to go to my room like I'm some little kid, Sienna wailed, suddenly playing the victim perfectly. How dare you, Linda said, turning to face me with fury in her eyes. How dare you speak to Sienna like that? Linda, you don't understand what happened, I started to say. I understand perfectly, she snapped. You're taking your frustrations out on a child because you can't have your own. The room went dead silent. That comment was a low blow. Preston and I had been trying to get pregnant for over a year and it was a sensitive subject. My friends looked absolutely mortified. That was completely out of line, I said, my voice deadly calm. Was it? Linda continued. Because it seems like you're trying to play mommy to someone else's child, and when she doesn't respond the way you want, you lash out. Sienna was incredibly disrespectful to me in front of my guests, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I was simply trying to address her behavior. She's not your child to discipline, Robert chimed in. But I live here, too, I said. I have a right to expect basic respect in my own home. That's when Linda stepped forward and slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through the room. My cheeks stung, and I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. My friends gasped in shock. Don't you dare say anything to her, Linda hissed. Or next time it won't be just the slap. I looked at Preston, expecting him to defend me, to stand up for his wife. Instead, he just stood there looking uncomfortable, but saying nothing. I whispered. He sighed heavily. Carla, if you want to discipline someone, have your own child. Those words hit me harder than Linda's slap. My own husband was telling me that Sienna would never be my family, that I would never have a real place in this house. What made it worse was that we'd been trying to have children for 18 months, and it had been a source of stress and disappointment for both of us. Some people just don't understand family dynamics, Robert added, shaking his head like I was some kind of outsider who'd wandered into their perfect family circle. Sienna was watching all of this with a satisfied smirk on her face. Finally, someone who gets it, she said smugly. Mike nodded approvingly. Stepparents should know their boundaries. Janet chimed in with a final nail in the coffin. Blood relations always come first. I stood there, my cheeks still burning from the slap, my heart breaking from my husband's betrayal, surrounded by people who had just made it crystal clear that I would never be truly welcome in this family. My friends were looking at me with pity and horror. And then somehow I found my strength. I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a bitter smile, but a genuine smile of someone who had just achieved perfect clarity. You're absolutely right, I said calmly. Blood relations do always come first. I turned to my friends. Ladies, I think we should continue our lunch elsewhere. This family clearly needs some private time. Amy, Jessica, and Rachel quickly gathered their purses, muttering apologies and shooting me concerned looks. I walked them to the door with perfect composure. Carla, are you okay? Amy whispered. I will be, I said, and I meant it. After my friends left, the Thomas family was still standing in the living room, looking somewhat deflated now that they'd gotten their way. Preston approached me cautiously. Carla, maybe we should talk about this calmly, he said. Oh, we will, I replied. But not right now. I need to make some phone calls. I went to our bedroom and closed the door. The first call I made was to my divorce attorney, Rebecca Martinez. I'd met her through my work in HR, and I knew she was excellent. Rebecca, it's Carla. I need to file for divorce. Carla, are you sure? You've only been married 2 years. I'm positive. Can you come over tomorrow morning? There are some things I need to discuss with you. The second call was to my boss, Maria. I'd been promoted to HR director just 6 months earlier and I had some vacation time saved up. Maria, I need to take a week off starting Monday. Family emergency. Of course, Carla, is everything okay? It will be. The third call was to my brother Jake. Jake was a successful real estate agent and he owed me a favor. Jake, remember when I helped you through your custody battle with Melissa? I need a favor. Anything, sis? What's up? I need you to quietly put Preston's house on the market. I'll explain everything later, but I need this done fast and discreetly. Carla, what's going on? Let's just say I'm about to teach some people about family dynamics. The fourth call was to my friend, Dr. Patricia Wong, who worked at the fertility clinic where Preston and I had been going for treatment. Patricia, I need a copy of all the test results from our appointments. Can you email them to me tonight? I can send you your results, but I need Preston's written consent for his. Just mine are fine. Actually, especially mine. My final call was to my accountant, Stephen. Stephen, I need you to pull together all the financial documents for the joint accounts Preston and I opened. I'm going to need a complete picture of our assets. Carla, this sounds serious. It is. Can you have everything ready by Monday morning? Absolutely. That night, Preston tried to talk to me. He found me in our bedroom, calmly packing a suitcase. Carla, where are you going? To Amy's house for a few days. I need some space to think. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting to a family disagreement. I stopped packing and looked at him. Preston, your mother slapped me in our home and you said nothing. You told me that if I want to discipline someone, I should have my own child. Your entire family made it clear that I'm not really part of this family. Exactly. Which part of this should I not be reacting to? He had the decency to look ashamed. My mom shouldn't have hit you. I'll talk to her about that. Will you? Because you didn't seem to have any problem with it when it happened. I was caught off guard. Carla, you know I love you. Do you? Because your actions today suggest otherwise. I finished packing and headed for the door. Carla, please don't leave. We can work this out. Maybe we can, I said, but right now I need some time to think about what kind of marriage I want to have and what kind of family I want to be part of. I spent the weekend at Amy's house, and she was incredibly supportive. She'd witnessed the whole humiliating scene, and she was furious on my behalf. I can't believe Preston just stood there, she said as we sat on her couch with wine on Saturday night. I can, I replied. I think this was always going to happen eventually. Sienna has been testing boundaries for months, and every time I tried to address it, Preston undermined me. This was just the first time it happened in public. So, what are you going to do? I'm going to remind them all that actions have consequences. That weekend, I had time to really think about everything that had led to this moment. It wasn't just the slap or the humiliation in front of my friends. It was 2 years of being slowly pushed out of a family I tried desperately to belong to. I remembered the first time Sienna had been openly disrespectful to me. It was about 8 months after Preston and I got married. She'd asked me to drive her to a friend's house, then kept me waiting outside for 45 minutes while she got ready. When she finally came out, she climbed into the back seat instead of sitting up front with me, put her earbuds in, and ignored me completely for the entire drive. When I mentioned it to Preston later, he said, Carla, she's just being a teenager. Don't take it personally. But it felt personal when she started forgetting to include me in family photos. It felt personal when she would make plans with Preston for activities I'd specifically said I wanted to do. It felt personal when she would roll her eyes every time I tried to contribute to conversations about her school or her interests. The financial manipulation had been gradual, too. It started with small things. Preston mentioning that Sienna needed new school supplies or that his parents were struggling with a utility bill. I was happy to help because I loved Preston and wanted to support his family. I made good money as an HR director and it felt good to be able to make their lives easier. But somewhere along the way, I became the family ATM. Every crisis, every want, every need somehow became my responsibility to solve. And the more I gave, the less they seemed to appreciate it. I thought about the time I'd spent $3,000 on Sienna's Sweet 16 party because Preston couldn't afford the venue she wanted. She barely thanked me, and when the photos were posted on social media, I wasn't in a single one. When I asked her about it later, she said, "Oh, I just thought it would be weird to have my stepmom in my birthday pictures." I thought about last Christmas when I bought Sienna expensive art supplies and a professional easel because she'd mentioned wanting to get more serious about painting. She opened the gifts in front of the whole family, said a perfunctory thanks, and then spent the rest of the day showing off the cheaper gifts her biological mother had sent. I thought about all the times Linda had made little comments about how some people needed to learn their place, or how blood family was more important than anything else. I thought about how Robert would always change the subject when I tried to contribute to family discussions like my opinions didn't matter. But most of all, I thought about Preston's complete failure to stand up for me ever. Every time his family disrespected me, he made excuses for them. Every time Sienna was rude to me, he told me to be more understanding. Every time I expressed frustration with the family dynamics, he made me feel like I was being unreasonable. The more I reflected on it, the more I realized that the slap wasn't the problem. It was just the final symptom of a much deeper issue. This family had never accepted me and Preston had enabled their rejection of me from day one. By Sunday morning, I felt calm and clear-headed for the first time in months. Amy made us breakfast and we sat on her kitchen balcony in the morning sun. "You seem different today," she observed. "I feel different. I feel like I finally see the situation clearly." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to stop trying to be part of a family that doesn't want me. And I'm going to stop financially supporting people who don't respect me." "Are you really going to divorce Preston?" I sipped my coffee and considered the question. "Amy, if your husband let someone slap you and then told you it was your fault, what would you do?" "I'd probably be calling a divorce lawyer." Exactly. That afternoon, I spent hours going through all the financial records I brought with me. I made a spreadsheet of every loan, every payment, every contribution I'd made to the Thomas family over the past 2 years. The numbers were staggering. Beyond the major loans for the house and the kitchen renovation, there were dozens of smaller expenses I covered. Sienna's car insurance, her dental work, her school field trips, her class ring, her prom dress. I paid for Preston's father's prescription medications when their insurance wouldn't cover them. I bought Linda a new washing machine when theirs broke. I paid for Mike's certification course when he was trying to get a promotion at work. All told, I had given or loaned the Thomas family over $200,000 in 2 years. And what did I have to show for it? A slap in the face and a family that treated me like an unwelcome stranger. I called my financial advisor, Margaret, on Sunday afternoon. "Margaret, it's Carla. I need to understand all my options for calling in some loans I've made." "Carla, are you in some kind of financial trouble?" "No, I'm in some kind of family trouble. I need to know the legal process for demanding repayment of money I've loaned to relatives." "Well, as long as you have proper documentation, you have every right to call in loans according to their terms." "Is this related to your marriage?" "It's related to my divorce." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "I see. Carla, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Calling in family loans can create a lot of animosity." "Margaret, the animosity already exists. I'm just making it official." That evening, I made one more call to my cousin Lisa, who worked as a private investigator. "Lisa, I need a favor. I need you to do a background check on my husband's ex-wife, Claire." Carla, what's going on? This doesn't sound like you. I'm getting divorced, and I want to make sure I have all the facts before I proceed. What kind of facts are you looking for? Financial information, mostly. I want to know if Preston's been paying the child support he's supposed to be paying. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Carla, honey, are you sure you want to go down this road? I'm positive. If I'm going to end this marriage, I want to end it completely. Okay, give me a few days. Sunday night, Rebecca came over to Amy's house with divorce papers. I've drawn up everything based on what you told me, she said. Since you've only been married 2 years, and you kept most of your assets separate, this should be fairly straightforward. The house is in Preston's name from before the marriage, so you won't have any claim to it. Perfect, I said, signing the papers. Carla, are you sure about this? Maybe marriage counseling first. I pulled out my folder of documents and placed it on the coffee table. First, I have divorce papers here. Preston, I'm filing for divorce. The room erupted in surprised murmurs, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish. I have quite a bit more to share. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. Preston, these are the financial records for all the joint accounts we opened after our marriage. As you can see, I've been the primary contributor to our household expenses for the past 2 years. Preston's face went pale as he flipped through the bank statements. Wait, Carla, I don't understand these numbers. Let me explain. While you've been contributing about $3,000 a month to our joint account, I've been contributing $8,000. I've been paying for 2/3 of all our household expenses, including Sienna's private school tuition, her car payment, her insurance, and her college fund. Sienna's smirk was starting to fade. But that's not all, I continued. I've also been paying for the family health insurance plan through my job, which covers all 3 of us. Preston, your job doesn't offer family coverage, remember? I pulled out another set of documents. And these are the medical records from our fertility appointments. Turns out, Preston, the reason we haven't been able to get pregnant isn't because there's anything wrong with me. The doctor informed us both 8 months ago that you have severely low sperm count, making natural conception nearly impossible. But you asked me not to tell anyone, claiming you were embarrassed. Meanwhile, you let your mother blame me for our inability to conceive. The room was dead silent now. Preston looked like he wanted to disappear. Oh, and Linda, since you made that comment about me not being able to have children, I thought you'd be interested to know that your son is the one with fertility issues. But I suppose that doesn't fit your narrative of me being the defective one. Linda's mouth was hanging open. Now, here's where things get interesting for the rest of you, I said, turning to face the entire family. I pulled out a real estate listing printout. Robert and Linda, how do you like your house? What kind of question is that? Robert asked suspiciously. Well, I was just wondering because I've instructed my brother Jake to prepare the paperwork to put it on the market. What are you talking about? Linda snapped. For years ago, when you were facing foreclosure, Preston came to you with a solution. He couldn't afford to help you on his own, but he said his new girlfriend Carla was financially successful and might be willing to help out. The color drained from Robert's face. Preston asked me to help save your family home. He said it would mean so much to him if I could help his parents. So, I paid off your mortgage, $127,000 to be exact. I pulled out the mortgage documents. What Preston didn't tell you is that we structured it as a loan, not a gift. You've been making monthly payments of $500 for the past 3 years, but you still owe me $19,000. That's impossible, Linda stammered. Here's the loan agreement with both of your signatures on it. Since I'm getting divorced and will need to liquidate my assets, I'm calling in the loan. Full payment is due in 30 days. Robert was staring at the papers in shock. Carla, we can't come up with that kind of money in 30 days. I know. That's why I'm calling in the loan. I'll be working with you to establish a reasonable payment plan, but the monthly payments will need to increase significantly. If you can't manage the payments, the house will need to be sold. I turned to Mike and Janet. And speaking of houses, how's your renovation going? Mike and Janet exchanged nervous glances. The kitchen remodel that I loaned you $35,000 for 18 months ago. The loan that was supposed to be paid back within 12 months, you've paid me back exactly $8,000. I pulled out another loan agreement. This loan is also being called in, but I'll work with you on a payment plan as well. Janet started crying. Carla, we don't have that money. We used our savings for Janet's mother's medical bills. I'm sorry to hear about Janet's mother, I said genuinely, but that doesn't change the terms of our agreement. Finally, I turned to Sienna, who was now looking genuinely scared. Sienna, sweetheart, remember when you wanted to go to that expensive summer art program in France 2 years ago? The one that cost $12,000? Sienna nodded silently. And remember how your dad couldn't afford it, but I made it happen anyway because I wanted to support your artistic dreams? Another nod. Well, since you're now 18 and legally an adult, that debt is actually in your name. You owe me $12,000. I don't have $12,000, Sienna shouted. You're right, you don't. But you're an adult now, so this is your responsibility. I'll be happy to work out a payment plan with you once you get a job. I closed my folder and looked around the room at their shocked faces. So, let me see if I have this right, I said calmly. Linda, you told me that blood relations always come first. Robert, you said some people don't understand family dynamics. Mike, you said stepparents should know their boundaries. Janet, you agreed that blood relations always come first. Sienna, you told me I'm not your mom and never will be. And Preston, you told me that if I want to discipline someone, I should have my own child. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. You're all absolutely right. I'm not part of this family. I'm not Sienna's mother, and I should know my boundaries. So, I'm removing myself from the situation entirely. You can handle your own family dynamics from now on. Carla, please, Preston said desperately. This is crazy. We can work this out, can we? Because yesterday when I was humiliated in my own home, not one of you stood up for me. Not even you, my husband. You all made it very clear that I'm an outsider. So, I'm acting like one. But the money, Robert started. Oh, the money. I thought blood relations came first. I thought family dynamics were more important than anything else. Surely these financial matters won't interfere with your family bond. Don't worry, I'm not going to bankrupt anyone. We'll work out reasonable payment plans. Sienna was crying now. Carla, I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said. Yes, you did, I replied kindly but firmly. And that's okay, Sienna. You're 16 and you're allowed to have feelings about your father's remarriage. But actions have consequences. You wanted me to know my place as a step-parent, so I'm accepting that role. A step-parent who's leaving. I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Preston, since you'll need to find a way to manage significantly higher monthly payments to various family members, plus cover Sienna's college expenses that I was contributing to, plus handle the household expenses I was covering, plus find new health insurance for you and Sienna. Since my plan won't cover you after the divorce, you might want to consider getting a second job. I hear the night shift at the warehouse pays pretty well. I walked out the door and drove away, leaving behind the sounds of a family in financial freefall. The next few weeks were chaotic for the Thomas family. According to Amy, who lived in the same neighborhood and kept me updated, Preston had to take out a loan against his 401k and pick up weekend work to manage the increased payment schedules I'd established. Robert and Linda had to significantly downsize their lifestyle to accommodate higher monthly payments. Mike and Janet had to take out a second mortgage on their current home to manage their debt to me. Sienna had to get her first job at a local coffee shop to start paying off her loan. Meanwhile, I moved into a beautiful new apartment downtown, got a significant raise at work, and started dating again. It turns out that when you're not supporting an entire ungrateful family, you have a lot more money and free time. Preston tried to reach out several times, alternating between apologies and accusations. His most memorable text was, "I can't believe you destroyed our family over one argument." I responded, "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped subsidizing people who made it clear they didn't consider me family." 3 months later, I'm happy to report that I'm doing amazing. I've been seeing a wonderful man named Chris who treats me with respect and kindness. I'm traveling more. I've redecorated my apartment exactly how I want it, and I'm no longer walking on eggshells around people who don't appreciate me. The weeks following my dramatic announcement had been quite the show, according to Amy and other neighbors who kept me updated on the Thomas family drama. Apparently, Preston had tried everything to avoid paying back the loans. He'd gone to 3 different banks trying to get a consolidation loan, but his debt-to-income ratio was too high after I removed my income from the equation. Robert and Linda had initially tried to fight the house sale, claiming I had tricked them into signing the loan documents, but my lawyer, Rebecca, had been thorough. Every document was ironclad with witnesses and notarization. Their own lawyer advised them to sell quickly to avoid foreclosure proceedings. Sienna had apparently had a complete meltdown when she realized she'd have to transfer schools mid-semester. She begged Preston to just borrow the money from somewhere else, not understanding that there was nowhere else to borrow from. The reality of how much their family had been dependent on my income was hitting them hard. Mike and Janet's situation was perhaps the most satisfying to watch from afar. Janet had actually had the audacity to call my office trying to negotiate a payment plan for their loan. When my assistant told her I wasn't taking calls from the Thomas family, Janet showed up at my apartment building. Security had to escort her out when she started crying in the lobby about their financial situation. The most interesting development came from my cousin Lisa's investigation into Claire, Preston's ex-wife. What she discovered was eye-opening. "Carla, you need to sit down for this," Lisa had said when she called me with her findings. "What did you find?" "Preston hasn't been paying child support for Sienna for almost 18 months. "What do you mean?" "Claire remarried about 3 years ago, right around the time you married Preston. Actually, her new husband is wealthy, and they decided they didn't need Preston's child support anymore. But here's the interesting part. Preston never told you that his monthly child support payments had stopped." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Lisa, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that for the past 18 months, Preston has been telling you he was paying $800 a month in child support to Claire, but the money wasn't actually going to Claire. I looked at his bank records through a contact I have. Those payments were going into a separate savings account. He was stealing from our joint account essentially." "Yes. He was taking money that you thought was going to Sienna's mother and putting it into his personal savings. There's about $14,000 in that account now." The betrayal cut deeper than anything his family had done. Preston had been literally stealing from me while I was supporting his entire extended family. But Lisa wasn't done. "There's more, Carla. Claire and her new husband have been paying for all of Sienna's major expenses for the past 18 months. The private school tuition, the car payments, the insurance, none of that was actually coming from Preston. It was all coming from Claire's household. So, when I was contributing to Sienna's expenses, you were paying for things that were already being paid for by someone else. Preston was essentially triple-dipping, taking money from you for child support he wasn't paying, taking money from you for expenses that Claire was covering, and pocketing the difference." I had felt sick to my stomach. Not only had Preston failed to defend me, not only had he prioritized his family's comfort over my dignity, but he had been actively stealing from me for months. Armed with this new information, I had Rebecca file additional paperwork with the divorce proceedings, demanding restitution for the $14,000 Preston had stolen. Preston was also facing potential civil fraud charges, which created additional stress for the family. The fraud allegations had professional consequences for Preston. While he didn't lose his job immediately, he was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation at his company. His employer needed to ensure that someone facing fraud allegations wasn't handling sensitive financial information. With reduced income and mounting legal bills, Preston had been forced to sell his car and take public transportation. The family was now cramming into Mike and Janet's house on weekends when the kids visited. And according to Amy's reports, the stress was causing major conflicts between all of them. Sienna had initially blamed me for destroying her family, but as more details came out about her father's lies and theft, she'd begun to see the situation differently. She'd actually sent me a text a few weeks ago that said, "I'm starting to understand why you left. I'm sorry for how we treated you." I'd screenshot the text, but hadn't responded. I wasn't ready to engage with any of them yet, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. Linda and Robert's situation had been stressful, but manageable. Having to make higher monthly payments meant cutting back on their lifestyle significantly, but they were able to keep their home. Linda had actually written me a letter asking if we could reduce the monthly payments, explaining that Robert's medical expenses were increasing with age. I'd had Rebecca respond professionally that the payment schedule could be reviewed annually and that if they experienced genuine financial hardship, we could discuss modifications. I wasn't trying to destroy elderly people. I just wanted them to understand that actions have consequences. Did I go too far? Maybe. Could I have handled things differently? Probably. But sometimes people need to learn that their actions have consequences. The Thomas family wanted me to know my place as an outsider. So, I embraced it fully and removed myself from their lives along with all the financial support I'd been providing. Sienna texted me last week asking if we could talk. Part of me feels bad for her. She's just a kid who got caught up in adult drama. But the other part of me remembers her smirk when she said, "Finally, someone who gets it after her grandmother slapped me." I might talk to her eventually when she's older and can understand that respect goes both ways in any relationship. But right now, I'm focusing on building a life with people who value me, people who consider me family, not because of what I can provide financially, but because of who I am as a person. They say blood is thicker than water, but money talks louder than both. The Thomas family learned that lesson the hard way. As for Preston, I heard through the grapevine that he's been telling people I was gold digging and that I manipulated the family for financial gain. The irony is almost too perfect. The man who let his family walk all over his wife for 2 years, who never stood up for me once, who benefited from my income while letting his daughter disrespect me and his mother slap me, is now claiming I was the one using people. I suppose everyone needs a narrative that lets them sleep at night. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, a reasonable timeline given the complexity of the financial issues involved. I kept my maiden name throughout the marriage, so there was no name change to worry about. I kept my apartment, my car, my retirement accounts, and my dignity. Preston kept his house, barely, his daughter's resentment. She blames him for letting me leave, and his family's ongoing financial struggles. I think I got the better deal. Some of my friends think I was too harsh, that I should have tried marriage counseling or given Preston more chances to make things right. But here's the thing, they don't understand. By the time someone lets their family slap you and humiliate you while they stand there doing nothing, the marriage is already over. I just made it official. I've learned that you can't make people respect you, but you can refuse to stay in situations where you're not respected. I spent 2 years trying to earn my place in a family that had already decided I didn't belong. When they finally said it out loud, I simply agreed and acted accordingly. These days, I wake up in my beautiful apartment, drink coffee on my balcony overlooking the city, and go to a job where I'm valued and respected. I spend my money on myself and the people who actually care about me. I don't have to worry about teenagers rolling their eyes at me or in-laws who think I'm not good enough for their son. It turns out that being not family is actually pretty great when the family in question treats you like garbage. Linda stopped by my office last week, probably hoping to grovel for money or beg me to come back to Preston. Security escorted her out before she could even reach my floor. I have to admit, I smiled when my assistant told me about it. Blood might be thicker than water, but respect and kindness are worth more than both. I finally found that out when I stopped trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. The Thomas family wanted me to understand family dynamics. I understand now. Sometimes the best family dynamic is no family dynamic at all. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that. Notes for you. I corrected all spelling errors, e.g., dad-in-law to dad-in-law, perfunctor to perfunctory,